If you're already a boss, Jesus tells you how to be a great boss. If you're not yet a boss, Jesus tells you how to be great enough so that one day you will be a boss. I'm reading from Mark 10:41 through 45. When the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as their rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and give his life a ransom for many." James and John had come to Jesus to ask to sit at his right and left hand when he came into his glory, whatever they meant by that. Jesus tells them, "No, these places are reserved for others." Two thieves, as it turns out, but the disciples don't get that. The other disciples had a sense that this request was inappropriate. To ask to sit at the right and left in a banquet or any place where seats of honor are reserved would be highly inappropriate. It was the host's role to bestow honor, not the guest's role to request it. But also they had to be jealous that James and John had asked for something they all sought: honor from Jesus, honor by Jesus before their colleagues. They all wanted what James and John requested, but James and John had sneakily asked first. The rest were simply jealous. Jesus could have tried to deflate the ballooning anger by changing the topic, or by trying to encourage the group that there would be seats aplenty for everyone on his immediate right and left. Don't think too hard about that image. Instead, he addresses the heart issue for everyone. They think about greatness and honor the way the Gentiles do, that their rulers lord it over them, that the great ones are tyrants over them. This is how the Gentiles act, a fact not in dispute. But as Tolkien said of power in another context, the Gentiles and the disciples, they were, all of them, deceived. This is not the path to true greatness. Jesus says, "But it is not so among you." Specifically, he does not say, "It should not be so among you." Jesus is not saying, "Well, as you know, we can identify two paths to greatness: the Gentiles' path, lording it over like tyrants, and the Jesus path, being a servant to all, being last, laying down one's life. You know which path I recommend." Rather, Jesus contrasts the false, dead-end path to so-called greatness, lording over and tyranny, with the only way to true greatness, that of being a servant. He is not saying that they shouldn't want greatness. They all do. But he is pointing out that the way that seems like the path to greatness, grabbing places of honor, sitting higher, looking down on people, is in fact a deception. Hence he says, "It is not so among you." So we might have thought that Jesus would command the disciples to be servants, but instead he makes it a conditional promise. "Whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all." By making it a conditional promise, he says, if you are a servant, then you will receive greatness, servanthood first, greatness and honor will follow. This is such a powerful paragraph, and is often powerfully misunderstood. Here are a few surprising implications. 1. Wanting to be great or wanting honor is not so bad at all. In fact, Jesus assumes it. The only people who will follow Jesus' guidance to become servants are those who believe in his promise of greatness and honor. So if you don't want to be great, don't bother being a servant. And again, Jesus doesn't teach his disciples to want to be great. He assumes they do. Secondly, wanting to be great and wanting honor is not bad at all. Jesus is not saying, be a servant, period. Don't think about or want greatness or honor. Some writers about servanthood imply that to want the honor promised in this is improper and cheapens the value of the servant's choice. If Jesus had wanted his disciples not to desire greatness and honor, he would have said that. But he wouldn't have said that, because to do so would have been to teach a different approach entirely. It wouldn't even be really Christian theology. And finally, wanting to be great or wanting honor is not bad at all. The critical thing is to enjoy the right honor from the right source. Those who choose to become servants based on this teaching here live by faith in the paradoxical promise that greatness is found by becoming a servant. It is not an ethically suspect choice. It is the essence of living by faith in Jesus and his promises. We want the honor that comes from God when we live by the words of his Son and when we follow his model in faith. In the last line of this short passage, Jesus uses himself explicitly as a model. Jesus, King of kings and Lord of lords, the one to whom every knee will one day bow, came not to be served, but as a servant. Unquestionably, this both epitomized his life on earth and led to his recognition as great above every other name. Jesus really was and is the greatest boss. The kicker on this is that Jesus is giving secrets on how to be great, whether as a boss or as a parent or as a teacher or as a friend or spouse. Find a way you can help someone who needs help, or even just ask them, "How can I help you?" And watch how that sincere attitude will transform your relationships and make you, well, a great boss. Please like and subscribe.